Hey guys, welcome back to episode 18 of the Journey NYC podcast. My name is Anthony Luke-Akagi, and I am your host today. I'm looking forward to speaking to a foreign guest today who is all the way calling in from Argentina. So without further ado, we're going to speak to Dan Welden. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dan.
Hola from Argentina now.
Exactly. We were just hyping up the fact that you're probably one of our first international guests.
Yeah, down here now in Argentina. Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Where in Argentina are you?
Buenos Aires.
Wow. And what are you doing down there?
I'm here with my boyfriend. Like, he lives down here. He's from here, and
Okay.
we're testing the living together situation, and not
That's a
doing
great
the
way
jumping.
to explore.
Yeah, not jumping into the citizenship thing, or you know how like sometimes people like we don't want to rush things, so we're just testing
get
it
a
out
little
levels. Yeah, so I'm gonna be heading back to the States and into June. And spend a couple months back in the States and then come back here again. And because Argentina, they have like 90 days that I'm allowed to stay without running into immigration issues. So like doing the 90-day stay kind of thing.
That sounds amazing.
But yeah, I really like it down here. Although I'm still learning Spanish. I'm the gringo. I'm the no. Yeah, Espanol. Like, I use that all the time at the grocery stores. Pretty much any place anyone tries to talk to me in Spanish. Like, but
that's great.
Also,
but I'm sure that they're also very hospitable, so they're willing to speak to you when need be.
Yeah, no, I've made, and my boyfriend laughs at me, but I've made friends at multiple markets around here, and that they are very nice, and like the fact that I will actually, like, when I first meet them and I'm trying to say stuff, I'm like, sorry, stupid American. Yeah,
amazing.
Like, there's a Chinese market across the street, like it's owned by a Chinese family. The family's all extremely nice, and the mother of the family, she now knows my name, and she'll say "Hola, Daniel" every time I come in. And
that's so great.
Have that. Yeah, I didn't have that in New York. I didn't have that in Texas. I hadn't had that experience. And she even wanted to teach me through translator ways to say things in Mandarin to her, but.
Amazing.
I'm still trying to even learn Spanish, so I was just repeating them back. And then she gives me chocolates and high fives every time I go in.
Little ways of motivating positive change.
Yeah. So it's
excellent.
It's very nice down here.
So Daniel, let's start off by telling people a little bit about you. Dan, I've been a fan of Dan's for many years. He had a huge personality and presence on social media here in New York City, which is where I used to follow him. And then there were some interesting things, and I forget exactly how I found out, but you listening to your story and coming from your background and where you came from. I think I had watched a YouTube video of you, and then I reached out to you. But you know, having heard what your story was like growing up, and then how you got to New York, and then becoming so successful in New York in the business that you were in, and then, you know, your growth coming from the background, you know, and events that have colored your life, I thought was such an inspirational story that I thought it would be great for us to have you on the podcast itself. I know that we've had incidentally for our guests it's been and for our listeners, actually, it's been a really funny situation because we've now done this podcast probably 4 times. Once it actually went okay, except for something happened to the sound bites, and then we tested everything, and then it didn't work well, and we couldn't use the episode. So I was very disheartened by that. And then The second and third time, we couldn't quite get everything, to work based on, Argentina outdoor sounds, international, technical difficulties is what we're going to call it. And now we are back for round 4, and this is going to be the one that works the best.
Yes. Positive.
I think our first one too. There was an emergency potty break at some point in it.
Yeah, right? Well, there will always be, because I have like the bladder the size of a toddler. So it's funny because like I'll go to movies or I'll book an airline ticket or anything, and I always say I have to have the aisle row, like I have to have the exit to go. And they've gotten used, my friends here have gotten used to it. They all line in before me when we go to the movies because they know I will be the one that gets up and says, I have to pee. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that it's nice to know that there's someone that shares the same curse that I share. I'm always monitoring how much I take in based on what I have to do. So it's like, how close am I going to be to a restroom? Anyway, we digress. Dan, why don't we start out here is tell us what you're currently doing right now, in Argentina, first of all, and just in life in general.
So I'm virtually personal training. I have my base that I still do virtually. So it's through basically interactions like what we're doing, only I have some of the bands and equipment here or upstairs at the building I am at. The building has a gym, so depending on what they're needing, I'm able to do from either here or there, demonstrating what they need to do. So it's like in-person training. The only difference is I can't spot you. Like that's the only difference. My clients have realized that I have a few clients even still from New York that they're like, it's basically the same thing. You're just in my ears. And instead we're like, so they have a tripod
in their head.
Pretty much. I'm like, okay, you start again. We're like, go. And then I'll watch what they're doing and modify. And
the great part is with virtual training is even if they walk out of the screen, you're like, I know where you're going, and I come back because you're not going very far.
Yeah. And then so they're also able to, like, on days that they don't want to go to the gym or they're just not feeling up to it, depending on what equipment they have at home, we can do an at-home session. And it doesn't matter where they're located, because I now have clients. I have clients in Ohio, Indiana, Australia, France, and so they can be anywhere. And depending on their situation, I can modify their training and still can guide them and watch what they're doing and tell them, no, you need to do this or that like change that for them. And then I still have my training app that for people that don't need any type of virtual assistant. My app, I'll create custom programs for them based on a series of questions, and then I'll do further interviews with them on basically, some people will have these goals that are pretty extreme, and then they'll send me pictures of their current body stat, which I don't disclose those unless they have made significant progress and they tell me, I would like you to show this. But these pictures that they show me, I'm like, okay, these goals that you have are unrealistic. This is what you need to try to strive to achieve in the time period that you're looking at. And then depending on, so some of the people that are very new to working out, they see a lot of the stuff that goes on social media. They see a lot of the stuff that is very unrealistic, because there is a lot of enhancement supplements, is what I'll say, that does go into some of these men and women that are creating videos that some of these people are like, I want a body like that. And I'm like, no, you need the best version of you that you can be. So then I try to bring it back home to reality, and I'm like, let's do baby steps, because typically people fail when they try to go head on, like, I'm going all out, I'm going to change my diet completely, I'm going to just jump straight in. So they'll either fail from injury, or they'll fail from getting burned out, or they'll just fail because it's just too much. Like, it's just too much. So
what I love about that is that you're keeping people realistic, and we hear it a lot in the media today about that not all influencers and not everything you see is real. And I think that that's an important thing that you as a professional are going to be able to help educate people. So you're training right now. I didn't know that you have an app. Is it just for people who are your clients, or are there people that actually can? Do tell us a little bit about that, because we're happy to, everyone wants to, get in and listen to your professional advice, etc. So I'd love to make sure that they know where to get that.
Well, the app, you actually have to go onto my website. It's dtfbody.com. So I'm taking the term DTF, which a lot of people know what that stands for.
What does it stand for?
Down to I'll say that.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes.
So it was coined by Jersey Shore, but I'm taking it into a body positivity standpoint.
Okay.
Because most people are wanting to get in shape because they have this fear of being naked, this fear of being judged, this fear of being intimate, this fear of not being desired. So the DTF body is to try to get you into the best version of you that you can be, so you are confident to be as sexual as you want to be, or as intimate as you want to be, and not feel like you are constantly being judged, because you're not. Like, you are becoming who you truly should be, when the world has taken a lot of things away from you. Like, you may not have the body you desire right now, but it doesn't mean you can't have a body that you feel is the most appropriate to you.
It takes a little work, and I think more importantly, and what I'm hearing is that you're doing so much more than just physical fitness type of, personal training type of coaching. You're doing mind coaching and making sure that you get people's mindset correctly. Because let's face it, I'm not built like you, and you're an underwear model. So and I think that's the way people would sort of measure themselves when they, given that we're bombarded with this idea of what perfection is, and yet perfection is so many different things for different people.
It is. And you wouldn't believe the amount of rude things, mean things that people actually say to me on social media, that I'm not combating. I don't want to engage with those types of negative comments. So instead, I just delete and block those people. But everybody does get criticism. Everybody does get hate. Everybody does have somebody that will love them for exactly who they are. But what we should all strive for is to constantly be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And it's not anything that we can't do. We can always think about ourselves in a positive light. We can always just take those steps to make sure that we are doing the right things to ourselves in order to do the right things to the ones we love. So say you fall in love, I find this happens a lot. You get into a relationship, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, my body, my life doesn't matter. No, it still matters. You still matter. Your life still matters. You matter to that person matters to you. So you two should encourage each other to continue to eat healthy just for longevity. That you two should encourage each other to stay physically active, again, for longevity. If you want a life partner, then don't make that life ending at 50 years old or 55 years old or whatever. Because my mom, her husband died at, I think he was 55
Oh my
from
goodness.
alcohol. And this was not my dad, but her husband. My parents got divorced, but her husband died at an early age from alcohol abuse and eating unhealthy. So he didn't take the steps necessary to ensure longevity of their relationship and being together. So because you're in a relationship doesn't give you a escape card to get out of being healthy. You need to continue to strive to be the best version of you that you can be.
So, you know what I find so interesting is, and I think this in general, and maybe it's just my own judgment, but I look at models and I understand that in some respects, the world literally opens up far more to people that are visually more appealing based on a standard of beauty that the world has created. And yet, when I speak to you, there is so much more depth than what I think most people would expect from someone who is an underwear model or, even in the fitness industry. Can you back up a little bit and tell me a little bit about how you got to this place? Because I think that's what's interesting.
So, I have like a long history of on and off fitness. So when I was about 8 years old, you know how kids often have these dreams of what they want to be, what they want to do. And then, but then society or your parents or your friends or anyone tells you that's not possible. So starting at a very early age, around 8 years old, I used to try to do fitness classes in my bedroom with my older brother and make him take fitness classes that I would instruct. And he, of course, never really wanted to do this. He was like, no. And so at an early age, I was running, I was doing sit-ups, I was doing things that other little kids weren't doing because I come from a family that's not immediate family per se, but a larger family base that are typically larger or morbidly obese. Okay. And then I didn't want to follow that same pattern, so my eating habits I would even change at a very early age. I didn't want seconds, I didn't want thirds, I didn't want any of that. But aside from that, then I got into high school, and then I started going into myself again because it actually started at about 6th grade, before high school, where my parents moved a little bit, and then I was also homeschooled. So I was one of those homeschooled kids that weren't normal back then, but post-COVID, homeschool kids are now normal.
Absolutely.
I wasn't considered normal back then. So kids would make fun of me. I was also very small and thin. I was thin intentionally because I didn't want to have all that extra food, but I was short. I was short and thin, and I was an easy target for bullies. So I was targeted consistently throughout my middle school, high school years. But I stayed working out because I knew, in my head, I knew that those kids, what they were doing was on them. Their insecurities, their problems. Yeah, it did hurt. Yeah, I did consider suicide many times because I thought, at first, I thought I can't handle this anymore.
But at the same time, when you contemplated suicide?
I started in 7th grade. So So I was 11, so about 12 years old. Yeah, my mom used to worry about that would happen because I would run away from school and I'd come home and I'd knock on the front door because I wouldn't have a door key. My parents weren't expecting me to just run home. And so then I'd just be crying at the front door because kids were mean. In locker rooms at the gym, I was the quickest on doing, they don't even have rope climbs anymore, but I would be the quickest on climbing up the rope because I was
lighter.
I was lighter, but I'll come back around to why I could do it. But kids would make fun of me, and then in the locker rooms, teachers and coaches weren't allowed to go into the locker rooms unless it was a quick sweep. And so kids would surround me in the locker rooms, and one would start throwing things at me to try to get me upset. And then when I'd start to say stop, then they'd all start coming and punching me. And then when I'd start yelling for help, then the coach at the gym, like the PE coach, would come through and they would all stop. And the coach would see me just crying, and he's like, "You need to quit crying." Like, because I couldn't explain what was going on because I was so upset. And then once I got out of the locker room, I'd run home, and I'd just run home. I'd run away from school. And so in my head, I just had to continue. The only thing that I could control was my body, and just keep working out and doing things. I don't go to the extreme. I'm not a bodybuilder. I never want to be a bodybuilder. Nothing against bodybuilders. That's just not me. I love to eat bad food. I love to go out with friends. I love all that stuff. So I couldn't be a bodybuilder. But the reason why I was able to be the fastest at climbing, be the fastest at running, is because I was what was considered a woods kid. When I was like the first 5 years of my life, I was in the most rural parts of Texas that you could even imagine. And we lived in a trailer house with basically, all we had was a black and white TV, which had an antenna, which you're not going to watch that as a kid. So all I did was spend my day running through the woods and climbing trees and doing that type of stuff. And then when we moved to Kansas, my mom gave me permission to go to the park, which entered the woods, and I would spend all day running through the woods and climbing trees and doing all that. So I was the weird woods kid. That
a young Grizzly Adams.
Pretty much. And then in high school, they required you to take wood shop, which I was very opposed to. And I was the one that stood up in class and said, "I am not going to do this." And the teacher was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Do you understand we're cutting down trees and ending all of these animals' lives just so we can mess up on some project that we're making that doesn't even look good?" And he was like, "Well, if you don't do this, we're going to have to fail you." And then the guidance counselor gave me the option to be I forgot what it's called. It's a teacher's aide. And I became a teacher's aide for my zoology teacher.
Oh.
So that continued my life. And then I was also, during that period, I was in ROTC, or it's JROTC, the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps.
Sure.
And that fit me because we had the physical training team. Sure. And so the physical training team was sit-ups, running, pull-ups. Like, that was the main thing that you had to be the best at. And so, they were like, "We want you." So all of a sudden I was wanted. Yeah, and this inclusive type of group, which was interesting that it was in Kansas, or in Wichita at least, it was the Air Force that was in our high school, it felt very inclusive. Okay. Which the whole high school, they hated us. They called us the Smurf because every Thursday, I think it was, we had to dress up in blue, like our blue uniform. Yeah. And they called us the Smurfs.
Wow. So you're now, I'm assuming 15, 16?
So yeah, around that time, so 14 to 18 was high school. And so yeah, I was still, throughout that period, I was called all kinds of really bad things. I was called faggot. I wasn't even out in high school until my senior year. After kids had bullied me, they would come up and push me into lockers. They would do all kinds of things. They would spread rumors about me. They would do everything just to target me. But I had basically 3 friends in high school. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody liked me. And so then at this one point, I was like, I had spent actually a summer with my grandma when I was 16 then turned 17. And I don't know if you remember, this had to have been back in like 98 or 99, maybe 2000, when Danny and The Real World came out. Like, it was The Real World and Danny. This guy named Danny was one of the main focuses as being one of these like out gay guys that everybody really liked. And like my grandma, when I spent that summer with her, unfortunately she's deceased now, but she was one of the biggest drivers of me coming out, because we spent that summer together and she was like, I want to watch The Real World. And I was like, I'm not allowed. My mom didn't allow me to watch The Real World. Oh. And my grandma was like, your mom's not here. We're going to watch The Real World. And I'm like,
go grandma.
This is my mom. Yeah, this is my mom's mom. So we watched The Real World together, and she saw Danny and she was like, that Danny is my favorite too. And I was like, oh, so
wait, my favorite too, meaning that she knew that Danny was your favorite?
That I'm Danny. That she called me Danny. So instead of Daniel, I was always known as Danny.
Oh, okay.
Or Dan or Danny. So she always called me Danny. And so she was like, that Danny is my favorite too.
Aww.
No, like trying to push it that she knows. And so then when I went back to high school after that summer, I decided, screw it, I'm going to come out. I'm going to be gay. I'm going to just let everyone know that I don't care. And nobody else was out in my high school at that time. And this was in, I graduated in 2001. So this was 2000 when I made the decision to come out in Derby, Kansas. And there was
what is that like to come out? You know, because you're what, 18 now, 17, 18. You're coming out in the middle of a very small middle America.
Yeah, this was 17, and then I was still one of the smallest people. Like my senior year, I weighed 120 pounds.
Wow!
And so it's like this bone-thin little person that still I was like, I've been beat up. I don't care. There's nothing else they can do to me.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna come out. There's this guy that I like. He's a junior, but he looked like he was older than me. Like I looked really young. I looked in my senior year of high school. I probably looked like an 8th grader. Like I did. And so, but he looked like he was a senior or older, and I was like, and he was taller than me, and I was like, everybody too was scared of him. Everybody thought he was a psycho. And but I, through mutual friends, found out that he was gay, and I was like, I'm gonna go for that one. And that was a big mistake, but it wasn't at the same time. There's a history after, but so one of his best friends was this girl that actually she had a crush on me and thought I was straight. And so he invited me to hang out with her and him. And I was like, oh, this is my way in. And so then first time we all hang out, I had never been drunk before or anything. He gave me, I think it was called Hot Damn 100. And it was 100 proof. 100 proof cinnamon, alcohol, hardcore stuff.
No way.
Yeah, and so he gave it to me, and I started drinking it, and I was like, I'm not feeling anything. And I didn't realize that it's not instant. And so then I took the bottle from him, apparently, and I started chugging it. And then this was our first meeting of everything. And then fast forward, I tried making the moves on him. Then I told him, I was like, now it's your turn. And then he flips me over, and then I vomit outside the car.
Oh, God.
And then his friend Beth were like, okay, we need to get him home. They were drunk too. End up getting in a high-speed police chase because they were trying, like, police were trying to pull them over.
Oh no.
Get in a high-speed police chase, and we end up getting pulled over in a park, the park that I used to go to when I was a kid, the Woods Park. And they called my mom, and they were like, "We don't know what happened to your son, but we think you need to get him." And she carried me home. I woke up the next morning. I was missing my pants and had vomit all over me.
Oh no.
And mom was mad.
Well,
But
hopefully that scared you away from alcohol.
well, you'd hope so. But so they continued the relationship though with that guy that ended up being like what everybody was scared of. Everybody was scared of him. He was physically and mentally abusive. Like,
oh no.
very physical. Like I had a whole history of being beat up, bullied, and then I get this guy that he was very physical, very mentally abusive. He would hold a knife, like.
Go ahead.
Oh, so at times he would hold a knife to my throat and tell me if I would leave, he would kill me and my family. He would hold a pillow over my face if I start arguing with him. And if I kept fighting, then I wouldn't be able to continue breathing. He would steal my car and leave me at his place and tell me that if I called anyone, he would drive himself in my car off the edge of a bridge. He would do like all kinds of crazy stuff. And he, in the process, ended up going to a club with a friend of his. And he was underage. He was still 17, and I was 18 at that point.
He was younger than you.
Yes. And he ended up in his car, and he and a friend of his were at a club in Wichita, got into a fight with another guy, and the guy was like, "What are you going to do? Run me over on the parking lot?" And he did. My ex ran him over and left the scene. And then came to me, and we had to figure out how to go through that legal process. And while he was in and out of jail, he told me that the only person I could trust was his best friend, which his best friend ended up being just as equally manipulative as he was.
Oh my.
So
and you're how old at this point?
18.
And you're having to go through this, and I'm assuming that like at 18 for most of us it's really hard to tell an adult about this. And
well, I used to have to go, I'd go home and I have to explain bruises around my throat from him choking me. I would have bruises all over my body. It was just a mess. And when I finally got up the courage to leave, like I was like, okay, well, I'm done with this. I have to get out of this. My mom helped me out of it. She got me, when I was trying to leave him, he had a knife to my throat, and he was like, "If you leave me, I'm going to kill you." And then his stepdad, because we were at his because he still lived at home. We were at his parents' house, and his stepdad walked into the room when that was happening, and I ran out and I left. And my mom helped me get a new place. I never answered his calls. I never wanted anything. And then it got worse for me, because then I made friends with these two guys that they acted like they were my friends, but we were really new friends. And I was going through a lot mentally, like nothing was making sense of my life. And this is the video that you had even seen into, the one that I was talking about, this situation, where these two guys, they took me out, and they got me incredibly wasted. Like, I only remember glimpses of what was happening. And they took me back to their place. They lived really close to where the bar was. Basically, like, if you can think about crossing the street and going into an apartment complex, that's where they lived. And so they got me there, and then they tied me up and got out this massive dildo. And as I was in and out of consciousness, all I remember is the searing pain all of a sudden, in because they ripped me open. They shoved the dildo in, and then I remember hearing them saying, "What are we gonna do?" Because I guess I was bleeding at that point. And then they then proceeded to disregard that and then take turns on me. And so then I just
So they raped you first with a dildo, and then they raped you themselves physically.
Yep. Then they took turns on me.
God.
And then so I can only remember bits and pieces of it, and just the pain, and then them saying that, and then each of them doing things, and then I just pass out again. And then the next morning I woke up and I blamed myself. I was like,
sure.
Oh my God, I need to get out of this situation. I need to leave. I invited this to happen. And so I ended up bleeding for a month before I'd even go to a doctor. Every time I go to the bathroom, just streams of blood. I was too ashamed to go see anyone. It was just like this, it was a bad situation, and I was ashamed. And so when I finally went to the doctor, after about a month or a month and a half, the doctor that was basically my childhood doctor, she was like, the test came back. She was like, "You have gonorrhea that's keeping this rip open. You don't have a fissure, so you don't have to have surgery, but you just need to be on medication," which was a relief, because that means I didn't have to have surgery to fix this. But and then so I had that fixed, and then I started becoming friends with this new guy. That he sent nice. His name was Nate. I won't say the last name because he's in prison. I don't want to talk about I don't want his name to. But Nate and I became really good friends. He was awkward. I was awkward. It felt like it was a good friendship. My mom met him. And then...
Can I just hang on for just a second before you go on Nate? As I say, I think one of the things is rape victims not always, but very often blame themselves, especially back then. Is I think there's this... They find a way, for whatever reason, to justify what they've been feeling. And even for myself, is coming from being molested as a child for many, many years, until you start dealing with it as an adult, with an adult point of view, it's still, the way you see it is at the age in which it happens. So you blame yourself for that.
Yeah.
How did you get over that? How did you actually proceed and get through that? Because that's a lot.
No,
First
it
of all,
took
the guilt,
very...
the shame, the fear, cannot have been easy for someone who was so young.
No, it took a very long time. I just blame myself. I thought it was my fault for doing it. I thought it was my fault for getting in that situation. I thought it was my fault for trusting the wrong people. But it took a long time, and forgiveness. I had to start forgiving. I had to forgive my first boyfriend that did all those things. I had to forgive all the people that had done me wrong in the past, and then I had to forgive these guys, in my head at least, that did wrong. And you don't have to forgive them in person. You do have to forgive the situation. You don't even have to forgive yourself, because you didn't do the thing wrong. You just have to accept that wrong was done to you. So just forgiveness, forgive the fact that it happened, forgive the people that made it happen, but not in person. You never have to do that. You just have to let it go. You have to accept something bad happened to you. Something that you weren't in control of. You didn't make this happen. A series of events made this happen. And you didn't have control of that moment. And those people that did wrong had the control. So those are the people that have to worry about whatever happens next in the universe. Whatever happens next is on them. But you just have to...
who helped you find that perspective? Because that's a really mature way of looking at it. To find
No one actually.
the grace to forgive others for, you know, wronging, you know, you or whatever it is, I think is such a unique skill.
Yeah.
I think
No
people
one
very
actually
often will move on and not deal with it very often.
It's not anything that anyone taught me. It's actually like something that I had to find within, because I had so much self-hate and so many things that I hated about myself, and it was not me. And I mean, a lot of people that go through horrible situations will blame themselves, and it's hard to find that inner peace. And it still does hurt. It doesn't the hurt's never going to go away, but the hate can go away. The hurt may not, but the hate can go away. So you have to understand that there's always going to be a little bit of hurt. It's just like if you loved somebody that left you, there's always going to be a hurt, but you never want to hate. So it's just like letting go of the hate. The hurt will always be there, but the hurt you can manage. The hurt's just a minor pain that you can deal with. But hate will kill you from the inside. Hate will destroy you. Hate will do all kinds of bad, horrible things to you, the people around you. And so hurt, you can manage. Hate, you can't. So understanding the difference between those two had to come from within.
So for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking to Dan Welden. He is in Argentina right now. It's our first international person that comes up, and talking to him from the Journey NYC podcast. We're hearing about how someone comes from, you know, pretty rural middle America, grows up pretty much a loner, smaller kid, bullied heavily. He's just covered how he was raped as a teen, and how he found grace and the ability to forgive those and move on and create this really quite amazing life that he is now created for himself. And I think that's one of the stories of perseverance and strength that we like to cover here at the Journey NYC. We like to talk about things that are sometimes difficult, that a lot of people have difficulty dealing with and sometimes don't know where to turn. For those people that, you know, may or may not have experienced sexual abuse of some sort, is while I don't, you know, attest to being a professional at it, I do encourage people to go out and seek the help that they can find and that is available to them, whether that be counseling or even a support group. I think those are always really great ways for people to learn to deal with their particular situations and also come about and learn to move on. And with that, we're back with Dan.
My token pee break. I told you it was going to have to happen.
Well, we had a nice little break and we were able to recap where we're at. I think one of the things that you were telling us earlier was there was an individual who's now in prison, and you were telling us about how this, after the rape, was the next phase of what gave you the strength and the internal dialogue and tenacity to keep pursuing, you know, something better for yourself and moving forward.
So this person that I have trusted, he first came off as a very good friend. A lot of them do. A lot of them build your trust is the first step. But it's not saying not to trust anyone, but just to use your gut if something's telling you something's not right.
Sure.
So this guy, he was the same age as me. He had been through a lot of bad stuff in his life. And so we became good friends pretty quickly. My mom met him. She actually was a little questionable. She was just like, I'm getting a bad vibe from this guy. I'm like, no, he's great. He's nice. He's everything, like not relationship wise. And then, so what ended up happening as a couple months progressed, he started getting weird. Like, he started saying weird things. Like, he started saying he had feelings, but we were friends, but not in a good way. He was like, I just want to see you. I want to see you now. I want to, like, very demanding,
Sure.
kind of way. And then he told me, he's like, one day he was like, he was with another friend of his, and he was like, Dan, I need you to come pick me up. I need you to take me over to my friend's house and get some CDs, which shows how old I am. Nobody has CDs anymore. CDs from a friend's house, that because he didn't have a car. So I was like, okay, well, I'll come get you and your friend, and we'll go get the CDs. So we get to the friend's house. Nobody's there. And we get inside, and then he locks the doors behind us, and he was like, you know why I brought you here? I was like, yeah, to get the CDs. And he was like, no, me and my friend here are going to rape you. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I was like, what? And I was like, that's not funny. That what happened. He was like, yeah, that's why I brought you here. And then they both started coming in on me, and then I pushed them both off, and like, fortunately, it wasn't too big of a fight, like not a fist fight or anything. It was just like pushing them off and running and like getting out. They didn't have a key to like lock the door and pull it out. It was just a deadbolt. So I unlocked the door and ran out, and I left them two there. And I went to my car and I left. And then about a week or two later, I get a call that that guy had actually murdered, like that following 2 weekends, murdered another friend of mine, slit his throat and licked the knife, because that guy was actually interested in another guy that the friend he murdered was actually, they were both interested in the same guy too. And then it was just a whole messed up situation where they were all at a little party together, and the guy that said he was going to rape me, he said he had gone into the kitchen at this party, grabbed the kitchen knife, came back out, started giving that friend of mine as well a lap dance, making him think that they were friends and everything was okay. And then while giving him a lap dance, he slit the guy's throat and then licked the knife, and then stole that guy's car and went on the run from the police.
That is insane.
So,
somebody is definitely looking out for you, because coming from that kind of violence and is trauma, I think you've come a long way. How did you get from Middle America to New York?
So I went from Wichita, which Derby is just south of Wichita. It's basically a suburb of Wichita.
Sure.
So I went from Wichita to Kansas City with my best friend, actually, one of my best friends. Her name's Audrey. She and I lived together in Derby in an apartment for like 3 months, and then she met a guy that then he lived in Kansas City, and she was like, actually, I'm going to go to Kansas City now. And she was like, you should come too. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have anything going on here except for a bunch of messed up stuff. So
sure,
I moved to Kansas City, lived in Kansas City for about a year and a half. Worked at Sprint when I got there, and then while I was working at Sprint, I met a friend of mine named Bob. He was the trainer. He was one of the trainers there. I got fired from Sprint for like taking too much time off, but the time off only happened because Sprint and Nextel merged during the middle of one of my vacations, and they had different policies that they had, and so my vacation had been reduced. But so Bob ran into me at the club, like at a club in Kansas City, after I got fired, and he was like, hey, I'm going to South Florida, down to Miami. And he was like, it's paid for by Sprint. He's like, do you want to come? You can crash in my hotel room. All you have to do is pay for the hotel flight. And this was on a Saturday night. And I was like, wow. I was like, you're leaving Monday. How am I going to do that? He's like, you got fired. What else are you going to do? I was like, oh, this is true. So I went home and I bought a plane ticket. I went I was like, Bob, got the ticket. I'm going to meet you down there on Monday. Went down on Monday. On Tuesday, have you ever been to South Beach?
Yes.
So it's Score in South Beach had a night called Latin Night. And I was like, I want to go to Latin Night and meet a hot, muscular Latin bartender. I'm going to go home with that Latin bartender. And so I go to Score, and I end up meeting a hot, muscular bartender that started buying me all my drinks. He was like, this drinks on me and this. And I was like, this is great. And then I go to the bathroom, and I wasn't used to bathroom attendants, especially women bathroom attendants in a men's bathroom.
Okay, sure.
And this guy came up next to the urinal next to me, and I was like, is it weird, or is it just me that a woman's in here staring at us as we pee? And he started laughing because apparently he and his friends had been like checking me out and trying to figure out how to talk to me the whole night. He was Irish, most white of the white guys you could ever meet. But ironically, his name was Will Smith.
Okay.
And so then I meet Will, and we start talking all night. We spend the whole week together. He asked me to move and to live with him after a week.
What happened to the hot? I'm still stuck on the hot bartender.
This Will Smith. I met Will Smith. he distracted
got
me.
It. Okay, Will Smith took you away from. Okay, we got it.
Yeah, and so Will like entertained me the whole night. We spent the week together, and then asked me to move down and live with him. And I'm like, I can't just leave Kansas City and like move in with you. And he was like, why not? And I'm like, well, actually, that's true. I don't have a job.
For the second time in Miami.
So I'm like,
what
okay.
Else do I have going on? Okay.
Yeah. So then I moved to Miami. Him and I dated for about 11 months, but during that time, I met this guy named Chris, Chris and his boyfriend. We all became best friends, but we were both each the couples that were constantly fighting. So I used to constantly fight with Will, and Chris and his boyfriend used to constantly fight, but Chris and I got along extremely well. And so after about 6 months of friendship, Chris and I decided that him and I should be together. And so we left each other's boyfriends to be with each other, which was really dramatic because we were all friends. But Chris and I knew we had something different. Okay. And so Chris and I, we spent 9 years together. We went from Florida.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, we went from Florida to Kansas, back to Kansas. And then that's where we thought our home would be permanently.
Okay.
But he got a promotion at ADT Security where he worked that moved us from Kansas to New York. And that's how I ended up in New York City with Chris. And during that period... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. So you're in New York now.
Yeah, during that period, I was... Since I had stability and everything with Chris, in Kansas, I was going to Wichita State University. I decided it was time to go back to college. He had a good job. I needed to I needed to go to college and finish my everything. And so I started at Wichita State. I was a senior at Wichita State when he got this promotion to move to New York. We had an agreement that whichever person's trajectory would move us the furthest, the quickest, we'll go with it. And he got that promotion. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get accepted at NYU. And friends in Kansas were like, no way you're going to get into NYU. And I'm like, I have a 4.0. I did this whole list of stuff. I'm involved in the city. I'm involved in the government. I'm involved on student activities. I'm involved in all this while having a 4.0. I'm like, I got this. And so, I got into NYU while he was there. And so I was going to college at NYU. Then I got hired out of NYU by NYU to be the manager of employer relations. Yeah, to be the manager of employer relations and operations for the career development office at NYU. And they it required a master's degree in higher education and 5 years of career development experience. I was still going for my undergrad, but I had such a diverse background that they thought I would be perfect for it. part of that role was also to counsel students on what their degree would get them, what kind of things they could expect pay-wise, like stress-wise, everything. And then on the other spectrum of it, I was also creating jobs for students. So I'm like, hey, I love a lot of aspects of this job, but it's not like there's so much stress in this job because like it was like meeting after meeting after meeting, plus I was on the communications team, I was on the social media team. I also had a target on my back because I beat out all these other employees that worked there that had master's degrees, that had 5 years career development, that all hated me because I was an undergrad with 0 career development experience. And so I had all that stress, and I got pulled into the vice president office multiple times where employees were filing complaints against me for creating policies and procedures that disagreed with their standards. And I'm like, I haven't even created anything. What can you give me one example? Like one example of something I created. And then, so it was just constant battles. And so it's like, I'm counseling all these students on what makes them happy in life. And so I reflected upon what, I was like, when was I happiest? And I was like, actually, I was happiest when I was trying to give my older brother fitness classes in our bedroom. And I'm like, maybe that's what I should have done. It just followed what I started. And so then I went home and told the boyfriend of 9 years, I'm like, Chris, I want to quit NYU and become a personal trainer. And he was like, you want to do what?
This is like, in what year?
Yes. This was 2014. I think 2014.
I don't know how that went over then, but
it didn't go over well.
Like
He was like, you want to do what? And I was like, I want to quit NYU and become a personal trainer. He's like, you have no certification, you have no experience, and you have been pursuing a degree for now 7 years, because when I went from Wichita State after 4.5 years at Wichita State, going to NYU, they told me, I was a senior at Wichita State. They told me most of my credits wouldn't transfer and I was going to be a first semester sophomore at NYU. But then I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so then I continued my track and continued going. And so he was like, after about 7 years of school, you're like, I'm going to do this. And I was like, yes, I think this is what will make me happy. And he was like, well, you have 1 month. You have 1 month to make what you made at NYU. And he's like, because the bills don't stop.
And so the interesting thing is, based on your history, I would guess that you crushed that.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I got this. So yeah, I got a job at a gym called Boom. They're no longer in business. They got bought out by Crunch.
Okay.
So at Boom, I applied and I told them I don't have any certification. I don't have anything. I work out and I know how to work out. I know how to instruct people, but I don't know anything else. And they ended up saying, okay, well, we'll hire you. And so I told Chris, I was like, I got the job and I quit NYU. And the first month at Boom, I was the #1 trainer. And then, so after 2 months, or it was 3 months total there, I told him, I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't agree with the way you treat clients. I don't agree with a lot of your policies here. I feel I would be a lot better if I went independent and did my own rules, everything. And the owner of Boom told me, he's like, most independent trainers fail. And I was like, most trainers that come in here were not #1 in their first month. And I said, I'm not worried about it. I have a business and marketing background. I'm not worried. And so, yeah, that was, I think, 8.5 or 9 years ago now.
So let's jump forward now. You're 8.5, 9 years ago, you decided to go independent. People obviously tried to hold you back because it would have served them better. Now you're super successful and you're traveling the world while doing what you've always done and doing it with a sense of passion and instilling not just fitness or physical change for people, but it sounds like a lot of mental change. So what is it that DTF Body or DTF Fitness right now allows you to virtually train individuals itself? What is your greatest hope for the future for your company?
I would ideally like to continue this path of not necessarily like I don't need to grow my virtual base too much, but I want to continue to grow my app base and to continue the combination of what I've really been expanding on lately is app-based with the option of one-on-ones when needed, or I have now clients that pay a membership where they can meet with me once a month to talk about things, to either go over form, go over diet, go over whatever they want to go over, or just talk to me. Talk to me about their holdups. Talk to me about what their challenges are, because some I've found don't need the form advice. They don't need me to guide them through their workouts. They just need to talk to me. They just need to talk about things that they're encountering in their life that are holding them up, things that like hold them back, things that they may have hit also a speed bump and they can't.
They need to check
they don't know how to get past it. They just need that report that they are going to have to report to me on us talking about where they are. So that's a good thing that I had introduced. But then I'm also there for my clients. My clients will agree that whenever they message me, and I get back to them as soon as I can. They message me through my training app, and I try to talk about whatever it is that they need to talk about. Some will say, I feel very rejected by people. Some will talk about how I don't feel sexy in bed. Some will talk about how I can do something better in bed. Some will talk about how I don't feel like I'm myself. And so it's just, I give the opportunity, and that's not an extra thing. That part of the training app is if they want to message me, they can message me and I will get back to them and I will give them the best answers that I can and try to help them in any way that I can based on my personal experiences. This is not based off of a psychologist reading a book. This is based off of I've gone through a lot of crap, and this is me giving you advice of how I've gone through life, and I'm still here. I'm not anything but what I am, and I will try to help you through what you're going through.
So for our listeners out there, Dan, why don't you tell them what your website address is and where they can actually download this app? Because it sounds like they get so much more for their money than just a trainer.
Oh yeah. So it's dtfbody.com. So D as in Daniel, T as in Tom, F as in Frank, body.com. And that's where you like sign up for the interest, and then we have our discussions, and then I send you the link to download the training app, because it's not for everyone. It's not an app that's just randomly available in the App Store. It's like we have to have a bit of a conversation first to make sure that it's a fit for you. And you should have that, though, any type of training that you're looking for, like any type of even mental health, whatever it is. You should have a conversation with whoever it is before that's going to be guiding you in any direction that you're going to go. So yeah, that's what I tried to do, is like make sure we have those and get on the same page to make sure it's a match, because we have to be a match in order to make sure you succeed. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for just your words of wisdom. You've shared so much, and your vulnerability has been inspiring at the very, highest level. To come from such an interesting and humble background, and to be as successful as you are running an international business,
I can say nothing but congratulations. I look forward to hearing more about what your company is doing, and of course the success of your new relationship in Argentina, and hopefully our paths will cross again. Thank you so much again for just taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
You're
guys,
welcome.
This is Dan Welden from DTFbody.com.
Thank you.
We'll include all of your links in basically the episode, as well as also the YouTube video.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, have a great day, whatever time it is in Argentina. Thank you so much for calling in. We really, really appreciate it. And again, it's Anthony and Dan Welden from the Journey NYC podcast. We'll look forward to talking to you again. Bye.
Have a great night. Bye.